Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Shutters and Speed. Today we've got another treat in what is becoming a recurring sort of theme on Meet the Classic Bike series that we've been running recently. And so you may be wondering what we have in front of us here and who is this kind gentleman we have on my left. Well, let's, as we say here in Norfolk, run them their titles, boy, and find out. Yeah, so welcome back to Shutters and Speed. Yeah, today we have the privilege of meeting our good friend Brian here, who is the owner of this fabulous Honda 404 from 1975. And he's going to allow us to have a look at it, go for a ride on it later. But I thought initially we'd get some idea as to what we're dealing with in terms of owner and bike. So, Brian, if you could just tell us a few sort of quick words about your background in motorcycling.
Oh, well, fair enough. I started out when I was 16 with a little Royal Enfield 250, graduated to a AJS 350, then a Vincent Comet 500, and then from then on I've never been without a motorbike. I like to think that I've had the best of both worlds. I've used fairly modern bikes to commute to work with because I always worked a fair way away from where I lived. But I think really I'm sort of stuck in the enthusiasm bracket that covers the 50s to the late 70s really, early 80s maybe. I just like motorcycles in general. I did a little count up before we had this, and over the years I've had 4 Triumphs, 2 Kawasaki's, 2 Yamahas, 4 Hondas. I've had 1 Vincent. I've got a little Moto Morini 350 at the moment. I've probably had more bikes than I can remember.
Well, I think that's a fair. I think you are, as we say, pretty much an experienced motorcyclist, and you've experienced many motorbikes in your time. And of course, then just recently, I think you said about 18 months ago, was it, or something like that you acquired this?
No, it was 10 months ago. 10 months ago,
okay, yeah. So, and you've brought this machine along for us to have a look at. Now, I can remember back in the day when I was a youngster, there was a young lad in particular in the village where I lived, and he had one of these, and we thought he was the coolest kid in town. I've got to say, 4-cylinder, them lovely pipes, the way they swoop down at the front there, it was just magical. And I can always remember thinking, that's what when I grow up and become a big boy, I'm going to have one of them. And here we are today, finally, where we're going to, I get the chance to have a look at one. I mean, in my particular case, I went down the 252 stroke route, and then went from here, sort of jump from there into the sort of 750s and 900s, as it were. But I always admired these, and so it's fabulous to see one in this nick and to have a look at and eventually go for a ride on. So, how did you acquire this machine then, Brian?
Well, I was looking round for one, and because I'm a member of the Vintage Bike Club, there's always plenty of people there that know a lot more than I do, and I could pick their brains. And I happened to be talking to one of the chaps that's got one, and he's had his from brand new, same year as this, and he's done a lot with it. He's taken it apart, put it back together again. He let me have a ride on it, and when I had a ride on it, I thought, yes, I'm going to have one of these. I've always admired them, and like you said about the exhaust, it's like metallic sculpture, isn't it, when you see the shape of it and the way it flows into the silencer. So, yeah, I bought this one. I think it was it looked to me like it was a stalled restoration, and there's obviously been a fair bit of money spent on it, but as regards the condition of it, it's pretty much got all the parts or similar parts on it that it would have had when it left the factory, except for the seat, which is an aftermarket product. But, I'm really pleased with it. I've had it 10 months. I've managed to do about 1,500 miles on it, despite all the recent bad weather. Yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I think you have every right to be, because before we sort of went on camera, I mean, we'll be hearing how it sounds later, but it purrs like a little sewing machine. It really does, you know. And
That's a good description.
Yeah, it really. I mean, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
No,
It just purrs along. It really does, and we're about to find out about that when we actually go for a ride later on. So, have you actually done much to it since you've had it?
Well, when I got it, as I said, it had a lot of new parts on it, but I've done a little bit of fettling on it, which you know, you always do when you get a bike that's probably been standing for years before I got it. I'm only the fourth owner.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
I believe the mileage, though nobody could guarantee it, but the mileage could well be genuine.
Yep.
Which is only about, well, now about 21,000. But the I've had the tank resprayed. I've done one or two other little bits and pieces on it just to tidy it up, and it's one of those things. There's not been an awful lot to do to it, really.
No, I think with these though, I mean, generally speaking, if you maintain them, look after them, they're pretty much bulletproof.
I think they are. I mean, this is one of the things that attracted me to them, because in the Cambridge branch of the Vintage Bike Club, there's now 6 of us with these.
Really? Yeah.
And they have got a good reputation for being over-engineered.
Yes.
So, you know, you've got a good canvas to start with.
Yeah.
There are 1 or 2 known little niggles that they have, but what bike hasn't?
Well, absolutely, and of course the thing is as well. I mean, I can remember, as I've said many times on these episodes, you know, back in the day, these were used as everyday transport.
Oh yes.
So you know, things like we talking about the front brake off camera, and those sort of things did tend to seize up in winter weather, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
But of course, you know, as long as you was aware of that and maintained it correctly, they were absolutely fine. But in, you know, as it is now, when we're sort of more leisure motorcyclists, we're able to sort of, you know, not go out in all the bad weather and, you know, enjoy them for what they are, which we probably, to be honest, never did back in the day, because they were utilitarian, really, weren't they?
You've hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
But now we just, we see it in our garages and we can look at it and think, right, let's go for a spin.
Absolutely.
So, any plans for it for the future? I mean, is it a keeper?
Yes, it's definitely a keeper. I'm one of these people. I've only got 2 motorcycles anyway, and I've never owned more than 2 or 3 at a time. And I like to think that over the years I've been able to try out most makes, and I've loved them all, but some have been better than others, let's be honest.
Yep.
But I can now be a little bit more discerning in what I decide to buy, and obviously the 2 bikes I've got now I'd like to keep until I have to pack up riding a motorbike, which I hope won't be for a long time yet.
Well, I hope so too, because, you know, it's great. The one thing about this is, as I say often on these programs, is the way that these are being preserved for future people to enjoy. You know, somebody's going to come along, you know, this is a bit of a morbid thing to say, but after your passing, hopefully somebody will come on and carry on the legacy and keep it going into the future. And so, you know, the historic nature of this will be preserved, which is great. And I think, you know, I think everybody hopefully will enjoy this, as you will, for many, many years to come. You know, and as you said, they're so well engineered, and they take, when you use them like we do, or you do, I suppose, you know, they will last that much longer because they're so cared for and looked after, and, you know, everything is just so, and it's great. It really is.
I think you're right. I mean, basically, I've always had the philosophy anyway that you never really own these things. You're just the custodian.
Absolutely.
And if you look after them, somebody else in the future will enjoy them, and they're there as a sort of a footnote in motorcycling history of what they were and when they came out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think we've had a fair insight into the both the owner and his background in motorcycling, and also into the bike itself. I mean, it's a wonderful looking thing, but the big question, of course, is how does she ride? But before we do indeed go for a ride, let's have a look around this fabulous looking machine. And so, as ever, let's hear this turbine smooth engine fire up. So here we are out on the Honda CB404 from 1975. And how does it feel, Stephen? Well, it feels great. It's nice and plush, maybe a bit bouncy on these bouncy roads, but you don't feel as though we're losing traction at all. And the engine is turbine smooth. It really is a credit to Brian and anybody else who's had a hand in maintaining this thing over time, because it really does get along quite nicely. We're going to give this a fair test today. We're going to take it over these bumpy roads, then we're going to go on some smooth sweeping roads, and we hope that all bodes well. Yeah, so let's see how she goes through this series of bends here. I have to say the ride is extremely plush. Oh yeah, it changed direction, great. Yep, very good. You know, it revs beautifully. The gear change is as slick as you like, and everything is hunky-dory. Lovely, big, wide, comfortable seat. You know, and everything is looking good, it has to be said. You know, very often when you get out on these old machines, you sort of compare them to modern day machinery, as I've said many times before on previous episodes, and you get to thinking that maybe that things are not quite as pitched up as you know, in terms of development. Well, I think this one has it's probably a little bit pitchy and wallowy on some of these bumpier roads if you compare it to more recent bikes that I've ridden, like the GS 750. But I tell you what, it aids comfort, and you know, you don't feel totally unconfident in putting it into bends, which is obviously great news. It's yet another example of one of these bikes that it's been sort of so well looked after and so well fettled and nurtured by Brian and any previous owner that has had this machine, that you do just feel as though you could just jump on it and ride anywhere. You know, and that is obviously a recurring theme as well. But that's the great joy of you know, getting the opportunity to have a go on some of these old classics. And let's not remember, I'm reliving a boyhood want here. I can remember when I was a young lad, as I mentioned earlier, watching a fella drive one of these through the village, and I was really taken aback by the looks and the sound of the thing. And I'm hoping that we're getting that now. So we've experienced the bumpy ride. We're now into the sort of more smooth section of road, and we're gonna see how she handles that. But you know, it's, oh, what a pleasure. Yeah, I can remember, like I said earlier, back in the day, there was people who were riding around on these things, because as Brian mentioned, there was a very short production run. And of course, you know, the two strokes of the day were sort of quite trendy and quite quick, especially the 250s. And I think sometimes maybe these got a bit overlooked. But you know, when you actually sort of park up on one of these, you know, you had tremendous kudos, which was fantastic. And those sweeping pipes at the front were great, you know, and they really were, you know, an iconic thing, I think, back in the sort of mid to late 70s. And anybody who had one of these was, you know, looked upon as a bit of a hero, really, for us young lads who saw them riding around on them. Now, the other interesting thing of note here is that we've got a slightly different microphone setup, so I'm hoping that we're getting a little bit of more of the engine noise and the pipe noise, especially as we go into these faster bits of road. You know, so hopefully that'll come out pretty good. I learnt this technique fairly recently from a chap in Australia who comes on YouTube quite a lot. and I'm trying it out for the first time today for real. So hopefully that'll add another dimension to these videos, and that you get to see or hear more of the engine noise and, you know, the exhilarating sort of sound that these things make. But I have to say, it's actually going around these corners really quite nicely. Certainly inspires confidence, that's for sure. Well, what about that then? I just thought we'd do that little bit of footage to a bit of music, and it was a joy and a privilege to put this thing through a series of bends like that. But what we're going to do now, which is slightly different from previous episodes, is that we're just going to have a little tootle around the town, just to have a look and see what these things are like in an urban environment, so to speak. So often we go along and we have a ride on the, you know, out in the open road, but let's just go and have a look and see how it sort of burbles through an urban environment, and how that handles that. So that'll be the next thing that we look at. But the overriding feel I have is one of plushness, which I'm really enjoying, I have to say. You know, it's a beautiful, soft, nice, easy, comfortable ride. The gear change is good. You know, the brakes are okay, but you know, this, bearing in mind this is from 1975. You know, the technology on that sort of thing has improved, but you know, none the more for that. They pull you up. And so long as you don't go too nuts and look ahead and predict, you know, you'll be fine. But like I said, the overriding feeling I have is one of comfort, and it really is, you know, coming along here quite nicely, it has to be said. So, you know, what a ride we're having. So we're just going to have a little tootle round down and Market, my hometown. And then we'll head on back to give this wonderful machine back to Brian. We'll handle that level crossing quite nicely, further emphasising the smoothness of the ride. Seems to be handling this sort of environment quite nicely. Nice smooth fueling, no juddiness, holding the revs that low. And there doesn't appear to be any problem. There really doesn't. Handling that quite nicely. Putting away second gear. Yep, pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, so the urban environment, fantastic. No problems at all. That's something that we haven't done on this Meet the Classic Bike series so far. Gone through an urban environment, but so far so good. If you're out for a cruise, you'd be well away. Fantastic. And the brakes there actually had quite a nice progressive feel to them. You know, it sort of gradually pulled me up to a halt, which was good. And you know, it's been fantastic. Have I got any negatives? Well, I suppose you could argue that the handling on the bumpy sections of road. It's a little wallowy maybe, but I didn't feel that it was losing direction. You know, the comfort of it is such that, you know, you can take these sort of sections of road without any real problems, like that crossing, which makes it comfortable. Yet when you go into a bend like this, you know, you pitch it in and it steers and goes in the right direction quite nicely without any problems. So that's great. All in all, this has to be, you know, everything that I expected of a machine like this, and you know, it just goes to prove, you know, how wonderful it is to have these machines available to have a go on. You know, these people are kind enough to allow me to ride them and enjoy them and take me back to my youth, as I have said many times before. Fantastic. We have the ubiquitous white van in our way here, but hopefully that won't detract from our enjoyment. And as we do head back and I get used to this thing, I have to say that I'm putting this into corners with the same degree of confidence I would any other bike, especially my Yamaha Tracer that I own. And I think that is actually quite a compliment. I have no worries about, you know, putting this in to a series of bends and enjoying the freedom that motorcycling gives us on a bike of this age, which is absolutely fantastic. This is of a 1975 vintage, as we mentioned earlier, and I think you'll find that makes this nearly 50 years old. 50 years old, and this thing is handling superbly. So, you know, what more can you say? As I said earlier, are there any negatives? Well, you know, I suppose I'm always the cup half full rather than the cup half empty. I can't think of anything at the moment. I think one of the things that has struck me, compared to how I visualised it when I was a youngster, is how small it feels. You know, it feels sort of almost 125-ish in stature, and you know that is by no means a detriment to it. But and I think you know, my bike that I have as everyday, or my own machine, is a bit more roomy maybe, so therefore makes it a little bit more comfortable for long distance touring. But for scratching around these country lanes or roads on a Sunday afternoon, I can't think of anything better to be on, to be honest. And also, you know, you can burble along and take in the views during the, you know, through the country villages and so forth. So, you know, what more could you ask for? It really is good. Yep, so we're going through yet another quiet fen village, and at this point we're nearly back to base. So I would just like to take the opportunity to thank Brian ever so much for allowing me to take this fabulous machine out for a spin. It has been a real joy, a real pleasure, and I have yet again relived my youth. This is something, as I said earlier, that I've always fancied having a go on, and when it came to light that Brian was going to make this bike available to me, I've been looking forward to it for some time, just to find out how good this thing is. And I have to say, all my dreams have come true, in as much as that I've enjoyed the experience of riding this thing, getting to know it and getting the feel for how it handles and steers and drives, and you know, everything about it is just as I imagined, and I can't think of many things to say on a negative fashion. You know, I think you know, you could go on about maybe the brakes and possibly a bit soft in the suspension department, but I think that only aids to the pleasure of riding this thing and making it such a comfortable thing to ride. And you know, fantastic, it really is. So thank you, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Well, Brian, I have to say, as ever, thoroughly enjoyed that. That was absolutely fantastic, and it's every bit as I remember it, and you know, well, not remember it, as I imagined it to be, because obviously, as we said earlier, I found that this was actually, you know, an iconic bike ridden by somebody in our village, and we thought he was some kind of hero, and I've got to say, I probably felt the same. And we went for a little spin round the metropolis that was down in Market, my hometown, and I was right cruising through there, imagining I was 17, and you know, the dogs' wasp names, as I said. So you know, it was fantastic. So thank you so much for allowing me to have a look at this thing, and even more so to have a ride. So it's very kind of you, and I'll thank you very much for that. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you have, then I would hope that you would like and subscribe. So without further ado, I think we will call a halt to proceedings here and now. So I'd like to thank Brian for allowing me to have a go on this fabulous machine, and I'd like to thank you for watching. It's goodbye from Brian.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from me, and we'll see you in the next video. So do you keep on a troshin', boy, as we say here in Norfolk. This will be in the outtakes, Brian, so don't worry.
That's a relief.
We don't need any lip from him either.
No, I'm going to dry up in a minute. No, you're all
right. Here we go.
Well, thank you for inviting me along.
We haven't finished yet.
Oh, I thought you had. Too quick.
Yeah. That's brilliant, Brian.
All right. I didn't overdo it, did I?
No, it's fine.
Brian has done it before.
Yeah.
I think you better do that again.
Huh?
I think you better do that again.
Yeah.
Cut!
Don't run me over.
Right. Brian, relax. Action!
Bye.
And as we say here in Norfolk, oh, that's crap as well. Start again. This is taking more takes, and that's my fault. Right. You keep on a troshin', boy, until the next episode. That'll do.
Good. You're happy with that, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Not easy, this, is it?